I'm 33 years old, and I live in the Ocean Parkway section of Brooklyn in New York City. When I was 15 years old, I was living in a house not far away from where I live now. My friend Rob asked me to come visit him after school one day. It'd been raining the whole day, so he decided to wait until the rain stopped before he went to his house. The rain stopped around 5 p.m., and I thought it was kind of late, so I called him and told him I decided not to go. For some reason, he was insistent, because he bought some $1,000 bike and wanted me to see it. I got there around 8:30 p.m., because I had to eat dinner and do my homework. As I was walking towards a stoop, I stopped hearing the cars passing by and all the city confusion. Everything was quiet, very unusual for Brooklyn, a place where 2 million people live, but I figured that was nothing. As I got closer to the house, there was an odd wind that flew by me, but I didn't hear its wake. I just felt a cold, chilling sensation. Then suddenly, I saw a man who looked gray and gloomy, smoking a Guinea stinker, Brooklyn word for an old Italian man's cigar, without any smoke. I thought maybe it was one of Rob's father's friends, but I knew that was wrong when I was about to get on the stoop. The old man got up, opened the front door with the stinker still in his mouth, and he just disappeared. Even though the door was open, he still kind of passed through it. I went into the house and asked Rob who the man was, but Rob looked at me as if I was a moron and told me to stop messing around. But his mother, who was always on edge about something, had a smile on her face. She pulled me aside when Rob went to the bathroom and said that the figure was evil, and his vision had been tormenting her since she bought the house 17 years before. Maybe he had lived in the house previously and died there. I don't know. I never saw the man again, and Rob moved to Queens because his dad opened a bakery in the Bronx and wanted a closer commute. Since then, I never went to that house, and I have no reason to. From the first moment we moved into our new duplex in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, we all had an eerie feeling that something was weird about the place. It was a dark, damp, and dingy place with an incredibly cold feeling about it. No matter how hard we tried to make the place warmer, it never seemed inviting or comfortable at all. We were never able to get a phone connected, so to add to the sense of foreboding, we were also isolated from the outside of the world. Within 2 weeks of living there, I was raped in my own bedroom. Our next-door neighbor, a 60-something-year-old woman who had lived next door, informed us that our house had never been occupied for more than a year. Every tenant prior to us also had incredible tragedies occur within the first few weeks of moving in, and they soon left. My brother and I both heard children playing one night, and when we went to open our bedroom door, it would not open for nearly an hour. Thumpings on the wall, strange cold spots, and peculiar noises were all commonplace. No one in my family felt comfortable being there alone, nor did any guests who stayed over. It felt as if you were being watched by someone who hated you every moment. My mother, not to mention everyone else, especially hated the basement. There were weird marks and handprints on the walls. One day, she was going downstairs and came screaming back up them, saying that some cold, clammy hand had grabbed her upon reaching the washing machine. Lights went on and off, and the odd occurrences became so serious that we left for fear we would all die in that hellhole. The ceiling toppled in above my brother's bed. An unexplained fire, whose cause was never determined, almost killed me. My mom developed cancer, and we all were going crazy from all of these things occurring within a year. Upon moving out, we found out that 2 people had been whacked by the mob during the 60s. A young boy had died in a fire in the 40s, and they had uncovered the bodies of 2 young children buried in the basement walls sometime during the 80s. No one has stayed in that apartment since, and with good reason. Everyone who has lived there befell huge tragedies that followed them until they moved out. In 1970, my boyfriend Ray and I were living in Brooklyn, New York, in an Italian neighborhood near Park Slope. We rented a small apartment above a grocery store on Fifth Avenue. There were 2 apartments on the second floor, and we moved into the one facing the street. Just after moving in, I was talking to a shopkeeper who had lived in the neighborhood a long time. She told me that the building we lived in had been owned for many years by a family who ran a printing business. The business was located on the first floor, and the family lived upstairs. When their son grew up and married, they had the upstairs split into 2 small apartments. The son and his wife lived in the front apartment, where we now lived, and the older couple lived in a back apartment. Just a few months before, the older man had died. After his death, the family had sold the business and moved away. To Queens, I think. The neighbor I was talking to said, "Don't worry, he died in the hospital." When I looked puzzled, she explained that I probably didn't have to worry about ghosts. The thought had never crossed my mind before, but it returned quite soon. After getting settled, we went grocery shopping and explored the neighborhood a little. About a week or so after moving in, Ray and I were gone for most of a Saturday. When we returned, some things in the apartment seemed quite strange. There were dark footprints on the living room carpet, where we knew none had been when we left. We had brought dinner home, and Ray wanted to use hot sauce on his, but he couldn't find it. I couldn't find it either, which was puzzling since I remembered putting a new bottle of Red Devil hot sauce in the upper kitchen cabinet when I put the groceries away. Later, we noticed that all the clocks were set at exactly the same time, which was not the correct time. When we left the apartment, they had all been set at approximately the correct time, but each had been a couple of minutes different from the others. The stove was the kind where you could store pots and pans in one side. The next day, I went to get a pan out and found a strange little bottle right in front of the upper shelf. I knew it hadn't been there before because I would have seen it or knocked it down when I cleaned the shelf and put pots and pans on it. When I examined it, I found it was a little plastic container, like the kind you would get prescription pills in. It was very dusty. When I opened it, I found it was full of those red-hot candies we used to get when we were kids, heart-shaped, I think. Ray and I were both a little freaked out by that. After that, there were a couple of instances in which Ray came out of the bedroom at night and found the phone off the hook. Instead of sitting on the cradle as it should, it had been set directly across the cradle. Finally, I made a little speech to the ghost. I explained to him that we wished him well, but that his family had moved to Queens. There were no further odd occurrences after that. A year or so later, I was watching a show about ghosts. The host said that the ghosts sometimes take things and leave similar things in their place. I immediately thought of the red hot sauce that had disappeared and the red hot candies that had been left in their place. I hope the elderly gentleman found his family or achieved some peace. A whole bunch of weird events have been happening around my school lately. I attend the Learning Clinic, a co-ed boarding school for kids with learning, behavior, or social disorders. The only weird thing I've experienced happened yesterday. I was walking from Brooklyn building to Overlook building when I saw a thing, perhaps a squirrel or a bird, go darting across the road, Route 169. It moved towards me very quickly on the stone path, and I thought that I might be able to catch it as it ran by. On impulse, I stuck my foot out into its way. Upon impact with my foot, the thing, what appeared to be some kind of small animal, went shooting up my leg, made 3 circles around my chest, then zoomed up my neck and jumped, or maybe flew, off the top of my head. The Overlook driveway is a 10-foot wide barren rock path, and I searched around for the creature, or whatever it was, but couldn't find it. It then struck me how much the sensation of the thing climbing me had reminded me of receiving an electrical shock, and I was very shaken due to many recent reports of varying credulity of ghostly encounters from my fellow students. I do not believe in ghosts, and thus am hesitant to even classify my encounter with Mystery Mammal as a paranormal experience. However, some things need to be looked at for what they are, and I can honestly say what happened was certainly not an occurrence with the normal ways of things as I know it. A couple of minutes passed, and then I observed a second creature running across the street. This one I let pass, though I still couldn't get a good look at it. It looked grayish, probably a quadruped, but I couldn't discern much more than that. It ran down the length of the overlooked driveway and disappeared into a breeze field, a field behind a residential house. I sat down and waited longer, being in no hurry, and observed two more of the things pass. Then, realizing I was late to civics, I hurried into the building, shaken but not really upset. Throughout my life, I've experienced plenty of ghost phenomena, and I've had direct contact with plenty of demonic spirits. I was once a preacher and wasn't afraid of demons or ghosts. I've been involved in exorcisms, whereby some of the demons, upon being expelled, made the hideous sounds upon leaving. I've never heard any animal that sounds like those demons leaving a person's soul. I've seen shadows on the wall made by demons. I myself was once possessed by a demon before I started my ministry. My wife and I have heard loud footsteps from a deceased friend from our neighborhood just dropping in to say hello. I've heard banging noises from angry spirits that vibrated my whole house. I've encountered so many hauntings, seen plenty of ghosts, and personally dealt with plenty of ghosts and demons. Each story is so haunting that I feel I could write a book about it. But I will tell you a story of my first haunting, because my first haunting is the one that scared me the most. Usually, when I verbally tell people of my first haunting, they don't believe me. In fact, it's hard to believe, but it did happen, just as I write it. I have no explanation as to how this happened, but first, please read my haunting story. My first haunting started when I was about 6 years old. I was raised at Park Place, Brooklyn, New York. I played with a particular clown doll that was most unusual in its appearance. Its face was fully painted like a clown, and its hat was long and pointed with a small ball on top, and it stood straight up. That doll was quite haunting just looking at it, especially his smile, but for some reason, that was my favorite doll. For some reason, I loved to play with that doll and nothing else. I didn't want to play with the neighborhood kids. I was a lonely child, and most of my day was spent rocking in my little red rocking chair. Usually, all day, and I would daydream, but I always had my favorite clown doll with me. My mother recently told me that she gave me the clown doll and my little red rocking chair, which would explain my fascination for the doll and my little red rocking chair because I longed to be with my mother, but I was raised by my aunt and uncle. My aunt and uncle raised me because my father was killed in a car accident when I was just 1 year old. My mother couldn't afford raising 2 children alone, so she sent my brother to North Carolina to live with her sister and brother-in-law. However, I stayed in New York with my father's sister and her husband. My aunt thought that I was missing out on my childhood by rocking in that chair and playing with the clown doll all day, but I had my reasons. I kept rocking and playing with my doll. One evening, my uncle was out all night playing cards with his friends. Usually, when my uncle was out for the night, my aunt would ask me to sleep with her, and on this particular evening, she woke me from my sleep and asked me to sleep with her. Of course, I obliged. I now believe that my aunt had seen ghosts in her bedroom and was afraid to sleep alone. My little red rocking chair was in her bedroom near the window, and there was a flower in a flower pot on the windowsill. My clown doll was sitting in the little red rocking chair, facing the window and the flowers. I was very sleepy when my aunt woke me up to sleep with her, and it took no time for me to fall back to sleep in her bed. For some reason, I was awoken around 3 o'clock that morning and heard my chair rocking by itself. My clown doll was in that chair, and as I turned my head in the direction of the rocking chair, I witnessed the most profound thing that has haunted me from that evening. My clown doll, was rocking in the chair and playing with flowers on the windowsill. The moon reflection gave the most frightening silhouette image. The shadow of my doll rocking in my rocking chair and moving around like a person playing with the flowers terrified me. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was not dreaming. This was real life, and I was really scared like never before. But my fears would heighten when the doll stopped rocking and turned its head in my direction. My heart stopped. My doll was looking in my direction and proceeded to get out of the rocking chair and walk in my direction. Immediately, I pulled the covers over my head and held close to my aunt with fear that I never thought possible. That night was the longest night of my life. The fear of my clown doll pulling the covers from me froze me with sweat dripping madly from my body. Thank God that my clown doll never touched the covers. What seemed like hours later, I finally fell back to sleep, of course, hugging very close to my aunt. When I woke up in the morning, I found my doll still sitting in my little red rocking chair with the most hideous smile on its face. I screamed like a baby and asked my aunt to remove the clown doll from my little red rocking chair and to please throw the doll away. I never told my aunt this story, and I never saw that doll again until about 40 years later when a coworker bought the clown doll from a website that was selling old dolls from the 50s over the internet, and a coworker bought the same doll. The doll was delivered wrapped, and he unwrapped the doll in his office. It had the same hideous smile on its face. As soon as I saw that doll, I asked my coworker to please put it away immediately and explain my childhood fears surrounding that clown doll. This is a true story. Now here's my explanation. Through my ministry years, I've been involved with many demons and angels. I've seen things move around my apartment as though someone was there moving the objects themselves. In fact, poltergeist activities have been known to throw or move items around. Therefore, mischievous spirits can make things like dolls move at their will. I have 2 incidents to tell you about. I was 9 months pregnant with my first daughter, and on the day of her birth, I experienced something that was strange. It was about 3:30 in the morning on March 22nd, 1993. I suddenly awoke with a weird feeling. I sat up from the bed and sat there a little dazed. I looked towards my closet, which did not have a door. As I looked towards the closet, I saw a black shadow, a big black mass hovering in the closet. It appeared to have wings. I stared at the closet for a while without moving. I must have dozed off, but was awoken again by some kind of feeling I had. I started having sharp pains, so I was rushed to the hospital and my daughter was born. There was a nurse there, and I tried to tell her what had happened to me, and she said something odd. She told me, "I know, dear, you must protect yourself." I asked to see that nurse to talk to her, but it seemed no nurse of that description worked on the maternity floor. I was staying at my mother's house with my daughter, and that night everyone went to bed about 11 p.m. So after I went to sleep also, about 2:45 a.m., I woke up, but I couldn't get up. I was paralyzed. The only thing I could move was my eyes. Then the fear started to set in as I started to see dark figures, dark shadows flying over my daughter's bassinet, but I couldn't get up. It was like pressure on my chest. I couldn't scream. Only in my head I could hear myself yell, "Get away from her, get away." But nothing came out. I stared praying. They just keep flying all around the room. Then all of a sudden, they were gone and the pressure I felt was lifted. I sprinted up so fast I tripped over myself. I grabbed my baby, turned on the lights, and stood up for the rest of the night. Since then, I've experienced little things through the course of my life. Thanks for reading. Oh my God, I didn't see you there. I heard you, but I didn't see you. I could have sworn I was maybe seeing things. God, I'm seeing things again. Well, why don't you see more things by, subscribing to my channel, maybe leaving a comment and sharing my videos. That way I won't be hallucinating and I'll know that you guys actually did it, because, that kind of stuff exists. I mean, it's tangible. You can see that kind of stuff. So comment, like, and subscribe. And don't worry about the background noise. It's not like I have anybody hidden in my basement. I'm trying to murder them. Yeah. They say Ted Bundy was a serial killer, but I don't understand because I have a huge stomach and I can actually kill all the cereal. I mean, I got Cocoa Puffs, Cocoa Pebbles, Fruit Loops, all this stuff. And I've never once heard that he did any of that. Like, what kind of accomplishment is that? Okay, everybody, we're just gonna wrap this up because I'm clearly losing my sanity and I don't think I have much left of it at all. So I'll just leave you guys alone. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. And remember, I love you guys. I just said that. Whatever. Now you guys can hear that more. And I totally didn't know what I was talking about, so that's why, Okay. I'm just gonna end it. Bye. Love you guys.